Before the Emperor unified Terra, there was no justice, only survival. The world was a ruin of ash and bone, where tribes fought over irradiated dust and kings ruled with knives instead of codes. When the Emperor emerged from the shadows of myth, he did not promise freedom. He promised order. And in a galaxy that had forgotten both mercy and reason, order was salvation enough. From the moment his thunderous legions marched across the wastes of old Earth, the foundations of what would become Imperial law were written not in parchment, but in blood. Each world brought into compliance was not simply conquered, it was judged. Those who resisted were executed, those who obeyed were restructured. And in time, obedience itself became the greatest virtue of mankind. The Emperor's law was never meant to be kind. It was designed to survive the impossible. A galaxy filled with monsters, xenos, and demons clawing at the edges of humanity's light. There could be no democracy, no debate, no forgiveness, only control. And so, from Terra's blackened spires to the cold manufactoria of Mars, the Lex Imperialis was forged. A code so vast and unyielding that it would outlast empires, outlive civilizations, and crush generations beneath its weight. It began as a simple doctrine, the Unification Edicts. The Emperor decreed that humanity must be one species, one voice, one will. To question that was treason. To resist it was death. The edicts outlawed all ancient governments, all religions, all philosophies that did not serve the throne. Nations that once prided themselves on liberty became subjects of silence. Even language itself was standardized. Imperial Gothic, the tongue of obedience. But as the Great Crusade expanded beyond Terra, the Emperor saw a deeper truth. That law was not enough. Law required enforcers. Thus were born the Justicars, the precursors to the Adeptus Arbites, men and women clad in black armor and bound by the will of the master of mankind. They were given absolute authority, answerable only to the throne itself. They did not ask questions. They did not debate guilt. Their presence alone was judgment. Each Justicar carried a copy of the Lex Imperialis in their data slate, a code so immense that no mortal could read it all in one lifetime. But that was the point. The law was not meant to be understood. It was meant to be obeyed. In the centuries that followed, as the Imperium spread like wildfire through the stars, the Lex evolved into a labyrinth of contradictions. There were edicts that mandated prayer before eating, others that forbade it, laws that punished heresy with death, and others that defined heresy differently from one sector to the next. But the purpose was never consistency. It was control. To live under the Imperium's law was to live in a constant state of potential guilt. The Emperor's truth was simple. If all are guilty, all are governable. When the Emperor ascended to the Golden Throne, the Lex Imperialis was left behind as his immortal voice. What began as a code of unity became a weapon of faith. The High Lords of Terra took it, twisted it, expanded it beyond comprehension. For every world, 1,000 new decrees. For every decree, 1,000 interpretations. By the 41st millennium, no one truly understood Imperial law, not even those who enforced it. And that was precisely as the Emperor intended. To the people of the Imperium, law became a religion in itself. The Arbites became its priests. The Inquisition its angels of wrath. The citizens did not seek justice. They sought survival. They did not ask for fairness, only for their punishment to be swift. In the shadow of the throne, guilt became a way of life, and obedience the only path to redemption. On the hive world of Virelia Magna, a common saying is whispered among the lower habs. If the law does not find you, you will find the law. It is not a threat, it is a fact. Every day, citizens are fined for breathing unlicensed air, for thinking unrecorded thoughts, for praying in an unsanctioned direction. The Arbites do not need reasons. The law itself is reason enough. The Arbites were never designed to protect the weak. They exist to preserve the order of the Imperium. When an Arbites patrol steps into a slum, it is not to solve a crime. It is to remind the citizens that crime exists only because the Emperor allows it. Their shock mauls are sermons, their shotguns scripture. Each execution, each public beating, each confiscation of property. All of it is justice in the eyes of the Lex Imperialis. But for all its brutality, the system works. Worlds where law collapses descend into chaos within days. Heresy spreads, production halts, faith crumbles. Without the Lex, the Imperium would eat itself alive. The law is the cage that keeps mankind from devouring its own reflection. The citizens may hate it, but they fear its absence more. To understand Imperial law is to understand the truth of the Imperium itself. It is not a civilization built on freedom, but on fear. Every citizen is a servant, every servant a sinner, And every sinner, by decree of the throne, is already condemned. The purpose of law is not to redeem them. It is to give them structure in damnation. In the great halls of the Adeptus Terra, where golden light filters through dust and incense, scribes record endless addenda to the Lex Imperialis. Each new world conquered, each new heresy discovered, adds another layer of legislation to the impossible machine. Somewhere deep in the archives of Terra, a single parchment contains the first law ever written by the Emperor himself. Its words are simple, carved into black stone. Order is survival. That phrase defines 10,000 years of human history. Every judgment, every execution, every world burned in his name returns to that truth. There are legends, whispered only among the Lex Adepts, of an unrecorded law, known as the Emperor's Final Edict. It is said to have been spoken in his last moments before the heresy ended, a command meant for no mortal ears. Some claim it is the foundation of the Inquisition's authority. Others say it grants the Adeptus Custodes the right to overrule any law in the Imperium. But most believe it was never written at all, that it was burned with the Emperor's mortal body, a secret too dangerous for mankind to hear. For if the first law was, order is survival, then the last may have been something darker, perhaps even the truth that no law could contain, that justice, like humanity itself, was doomed to corruption. And so, 10,000 years later, the Imperium enforces the Lex Imperialis without question. Planets rise and fall beneath its weight. Entire sectors burn for the crime of misunderstanding it. Billions are judged without trial, and trillions more wait their turn. Yet still, the Empire endures, not because of the righteousness of its laws, but because those laws are too vast to defy. There is a saying carved above the gates of every Arbit's fortress: ignorance is innocence. And in a galaxy ruled by law without mercy, ignorance may be the only justice mankind will ever know. In the Imperium of man, law does not rise from the people, it descends from above. It is not written for the common man, but upon him. Justice flows downward like molten gold, pure at the top, corrupted by the time it reaches the ground. To understand Imperial law is to trace this descent, from the radiant spires of Terra to the choking filth of a hive's underbelly, and to see how, at every level, judgment becomes less about truth and more about obedience. At the summit sits the High Lords of Terra, the hidden council that interprets the will of the Emperor. To them, justice is not a matter of crime and punishment. It is policy. They issue decrees not to protect the innocent, but to preserve the structure of the Imperium itself. To these figures, the law is a weapon, not a shield. Their decisions can condemn entire sectors, sanctify exterminations, and redefine morality itself. When they speak, planets die. Beneath them are the senators of the Lex, robed functionaries who spend entire lifetimes cataloging, debating, and amending laws they no longer remember the origins of. They write upon parchment made from flayed skin, sealing every document with wax and blood. The oldest among them do not even believe the Emperor still lives. They serve the machinery of his law because the alternative is unthinkable. They are the stewards of obedience, the keepers of fear. From the palaces of Terra, the law travels outward through the void, encoded in astropathic messages, broadcast across the Astronomicon, and replicated by scribes on 1,000 worlds. But every transmission distorts, every echo changes. By the time the law reaches a distant planet, its words have mutated. What was once a tax on ties becomes a sentence of death. What was once a regulation becomes heresy. This distortion is not an accident. It is design. The Imperium's law thrives on ambiguity. Clarity invites rebellion, but confusion breeds compliance. When citizens cannot understand the law, they cannot question it. They obey simply to survive. And so, the hierarchy of judgment is maintained, not by logic, but by terror. At the planetary level, justice is administered by planetary governors, each one a petty god in their own right. They are the Emperor's chosen vassals, granted authority to rule as they see fit, so long as their worlds pay their tithes and maintain order. To their subjects, their word is law. A governor's decree can make day into night, crime into virtue, and virtue into death. Those who serve them, magistrates, scribes, and enforcers, form the first visible layer of imperial justice. And yet, even they are afraid. For above them stand the Adeptus Arbites, the fists of the Lex Imperialis. To the Arbites, the governor's authority is conditional, derived from the emperor and subject to withdrawal. Their purpose is not to maintain the governor's peace, but the emperor's. When a governor falters, when rebellion brews, When corruption festers too deeply, the Arbites intervene. Their verdicts are swift and absolute. Imagine the moment their ships descend, black as judgment, their banners bearing the sigil of the Aquila split in two, symbolizing authority and death. Citizens stop working. The air itself seems to tighten. Entire districts kneel in silence as the Arbites stride through the streets, their boots echoing against Ferrocrete, their eyes hidden behind lenses of law. They do not ask questions. They do not listen to pleas. The Arbites exist to remind mankind that mercy is heresy. They are the Emperor's will, given form and ammunition, and yet, even they serve something greater. Above the Arbites, beyond even the High Lords, operates a force that does not acknowledge hierarchy at all. The Inquisition. They are the Emperor's absolute agents, answering only to his silent judgment. To encounter an Inquisitor is to be stripped of rights, rank, and name. Even the Arbites bow before them. Where the Arbites enforce law, the Inquisition defines it. When an Inquisitor declares someone guilty, the act itself becomes law. No records are needed, no trial held. An Inquisitor's word is truth, because the Imperium believes it must be. To question them is not defiance of authority, but defiance of reality. The hierarchy, therefore, is not linear. It is recursive, looping endlessly between faith, bureaucracy, and violence. Each layer reinforces the one above it through fear. The citizen fears the magistrate fears the Arbites fear the Inquisition, and the Inquisition fears only the Emperor, or the thought that he might be watching. But beneath this towering structure of devotion and dread lies another form of justice, the kind that festers in the shadows, in the underhives of Necromunda, in the labor pits of Armageddon, in the frozen slums of Valhalla Prime. The law of the Imperium is a distant myth. Here, justice is bartered in blood and bribes. Guilders control trade, enforcers sell forgiveness, and the Arbites arrive only when order collapses beyond recovery. To these people, the Lex Imperialis is not a divine scripture. It is a nightmare whispered by bureaucrats who will never see the lightless depths they condemn. Yet even in these forgotten corners, the Emperor's shadow looms. Local enforcers wear flak armor molded to resemble Arbites' carapace. Judges carry replica seals forged from scrap metal. They pretend, and the pretense alone keeps society from falling apart. Because in the Imperium, the illusion of justice is often more important than justice itself. The true brilliance, or horror, of the hierarchy of judgment lies in its self-preservation. No matter how corrupt, no matter how many officials fall to heresy or greed, the system does not break. It absorbs failure like flesh heals around a wound. When a magistrate is executed for corruption, a dozen more step forward, eager to prove their loyalty. When a planetary court collapses in revolt, the Arbites arrive, purge it, and replace it with new judges drawn from the same ranks. The machine of law feeds on its own decay, growing stronger with every execution. And for all its cruelty, it works. A galaxy of 1,000,000 worlds cannot function without a unifying terror. The Lex Imperialis ensures that every human, from the governor of a forge world to the lowest hive laborer, knows exactly where they stand. Beneath judgment, consider this. A man on a distant agri-world steals a loaf of ration bread. He is reported by his neighbor, tried by a local enforcer, and executed by firing squad. Days later, the Arbites arrive, not to question the verdict, but to punish the inefficiency of it. The enforcer is flogged for using 6 bullets instead of 1. The governor is fined for allowing ration shortages. The farmer who reported the crime is elevated to foreman for his piety. The thief is forgotten. His family starves. The law continues. This is the essence of the hierarchy of judgment. A system that punishes, rewards, and forgets in the same breath. It does not seek justice. It seeks continuity. Those who live under it learn quickly. The law is not a path to salvation. It is a weapon, and everyone wields it against someone else. And so the cycle endures. From the golden chambers of the High Lords to the blood-slick alleys of the Hive, justice cascades through the Imperium like oil through machinery, thick, choking, and flammable. It keeps the engine of humanity turning, even as it burns. For in the Imperium of man, there is no equality before the law, only hierarchy, only judgment, only the will of the Emperor descending forever, like the endless fall of ash over a world that forgot how to breathe. They arrive without warning. The Vox sirens die. The streets fall silent. The only sound left is the echo of their boots, slow, deliberate, and absolute. To see an Arbites patrol is to feel judgment made flesh. They are not men. They are the law. Across the Imperium's 1,000,000 worlds, The Adeptus Arbites serve as the physical embodiment of the Lex Imperialis, the unbending spine of imperial order. While planetary enforcers uphold local statutes, the Arbites answer only to Terra. Their loyalty is not to governors, not to nobles, not even to the people they police. It is to the Emperor and his law. And where they tread, all other authorities fall silent. Their origin reaches back to the earliest days of the Imperium, when rebellion was more common than faith. The Emperor's armies could conquer worlds, but they could not keep them. Civil order required something stronger than fear of the gun. It required fear of consequence. Thus were the first Justicars Terran, precursors to the Arbites, sent forth to impose the will of Terra upon its restless children. They were judges, executioners, and symbols, a constant reminder that the Emperor's reach was infinite. In time, the Justicars evolved into an empire-spanning organization, armed and armored as if every world they visited were an enemy stronghold. Their name changed, but their purpose never did. The Adeptus Arbites are not peacekeepers. They are the iron fist that reminds humanity that peace is not a right, it is a decree. A single arbitrator's arrival on a world carries more weight than an entire regiment of local enforcers. They wear their armor like monuments. Black carapace reinforced with ceramite, the golden aquila carved across the chest like a divine scar. Their visors reveal nothing of the human beneath. Their shotguns, the combat-issue combat shot cannons, are modified to deliver judgment in close quarters, shredding flesh and steel with the same divine precision. The symbol on their pauldrons, the split aquila, wings spread over a sword of law, is the last thing many heretics ever see. To be an Arbite is to surrender identity. Their oaths are sealed not only in blood but in purpose. They do not marry, they do not retire. Their names are erased from imperial record, replaced by serial designations. They are born from the Schola Progenium, the orphanages of imperial war, raised to worship the Lex Imperialis as others worship saints. By the time they reach adulthood, they no longer question morality. They enforce it. Justice to an Arbite is not an ideal. It is geometry, cold, perfect, impersonal. When they descend upon a hive world, they do so with mathematical precision. They isolate districts, seal exits, and impose curfews. Their loudspeakers ring with scripture. By decree of the Emperor of mankind, this sector is under judgment. Non-compliance is heresy. Within hours, thousands kneel. Within days, thousands are dead. By the end of the purge, the survivors no longer remember why it began. They remember only the law. The Arbites maintain their own fortresses on every world of consequence, towering bastions of black stone and iron that serve as both courthouse and execution ground. Within these citadels, the air tastes of oil and sanctified incense. Chains hang from vaulted ceilings, each etched with fragments of the Lex Imperialis. The halls echo with the sound of boots and sermons. Here, the accused are not tried. They are measured. A tribunal of 3 arbitrators presides over each case. The accused is brought forward, shackled, hooded, stripped of name and rank. The lead judge reads from a random passage of the Lex Imperialis. The defendant's crime is compared to the scripture, often metaphorically, always unfavorably. The sentence is carried out immediately. In the eyes of the Arbites, hesitation is sin. Most punishments end in execution, but there are worse fates. Those deemed useful are sent to the penal legions, stripped of identity, fitted with explosive collars, and thrown into wars they will never survive. Others are handed over to the Adeptus Mechanicus for correction, their minds erased and bodies reshaped into servitors. The rest vanish into oubliettes, their names erased, their memories dissolved in darkness. In the Imperium, disappearance is often the kindest form of justice, and yet, for all their brutality, the Arbites are respected, even revered. To the faithful, they are instruments of divine order. To the corrupt, they are a nightmare given form. Their presence stabilizes entire sectors. Their discipline holds back the rot that devours the Imperium from within. Where the Arbites stand, rebellion dies. But they are not incorruptible. The Arbites' devotion to the Lex Imperialis is so absolute that it blinds them to its contradictions. They enforce every decree, no matter how absurd, no matter how unjust, because the law is their god, and gods cannot be questioned. Some have executed entire villages for failing to tithe in time. Others have purged noble houses for bureaucratic error. When asked why, they respond with the same words etched into every Arbite's fortress. The law does not err. Among their ranks, there are whispers of a darker breed, the judges errant, Arbites who have gone beyond even sanctioned brutality. They wander the void, answering only to their own interpretations of justice. Some hunt corrupt nobles, others hunt their own kind. To many they are heretics, to others saints. But all agree on one thing: wherever they go, death follows. Still, it is not malice that drives them. It is faith. Faith in the Emperor's law as the only force holding mankind together. They see themselves as the Emperor's hand, crushing those who threaten his design. And in a way they are right. The Imperium is too vast, too decayed, too fragile to survive without them. The Arbites are the iron skeleton beneath its rotting flesh. They ensure the wheels of industry grind, that the prayers are recited, that the tithes are delivered. They keep the illusion alive, that the Imperium still functions. But for all their power, the Arbites know fear. Not of heretics, not of rebellion, but of the Inquisition. When an Inquisitor arrives, the Arbites kneel. Their authority dissolves. Their fortress becomes a tool. Their judges become servants. The Inquisition's writ overrides the Lex Imperialis itself. To an Arbite, this is a theological crisis, a reminder that even law must bow to faith. Some obey without question. Others break, unable to comprehend a world where justice is not supreme. Yet the machine continues. For every Arbite who dies questioning his purpose, 100 more are trained to replace him. For every fortress burned by rebellion, another rises on the ashes. The Adeptus Arbites do not evolve. They endure. They are the eternal guardians of a truth the Imperium dares not speak. That justice has nothing to do with right or wrong. It is simply what remains when power fears chaos, and so they march faceless, wordless, relentless, across the dead cities of a dying empire, their boots echoing like drums of judgment. For in the Imperium of man, the law has no heart, only a trigger, and the Adeptus Arbites are the finger that pulls it. When the Arbites pass judgment, they do so with the weight of law. When the Inquisition passes judgment, they do so with the weight of truth, or what they claim it to be. To the common citizen of the Imperium, the two forces may seem the same. Armored figures who appear from the void to destroy lives in the Emperor's name. But the Inquisition operates beyond law. It is not bound by the Lex Imperialis. It is the Emperor's living will. Untouchable, unquestionable, and infinite in reach. The Inquisition is not a branch of government. It is a state within a state, a holy disease that infects every corner of the Imperium. Its agents are few, yet their influence stretches from the darkest hive alleys to the golden spires of the Imperial Palace itself. They answer to no one. No Arbite may detain them. No governor may defy them. No world may refuse them. The words of an Inquisitor are equivalent to divine decree. To hear them is to be judged. Their origins lie in the aftermath of the Horus Heresy, when the Imperium nearly tore itself apart. The Emperor's body was broken, his mind trapped within the Golden Throne, and his empire lay in ruins. The survivors who gathered around his shattered light realized that power alone could not preserve humanity. Heresy had begun in whispers, in thoughts, not in battles. To prevent such betrayal from ever rising again, a new order was born, the Inquisition. Their creed was simple: innocence proves nothing. From this phrase came an entire philosophy. The Inquisition does not seek evidence, it seeks infection. It hunts the seeds of corruption before they bloom. To them, suspicion is guilt, and ignorance is no defense. They do not wait for heresy to act. They assume it already exists, and simply has not yet been exposed. In this way, they are not investigators. They are exterminators. Every Inquisitor operates alone, or within a cell of trusted acolytes. Their ranks are divided into ordos, the holy triad that defines the boundaries of damnation. The Ordo Hereticus is perhaps the most feared, for it deals with the corruption of man, witches, heretics, cultists, and traitors. Their agents are everywhere, in the confessional chambers of cathedrals, in the archives of the Administratum, even in the barracks of the Astra Militarum. They burn, purge, and erase any trace of deviation. Their favorite phrase, carved into the walls of interrogation chambers, reads, "Better 1,000 innocents burn than one heretic lives." The Ordo Xenos watches the boundaries of mankind's existence, its members obsessed with the alien threat. To them, no Xeno species can be trusted, no matter how benign. They oversee exterminations, weaponize hatred, and sometimes use the very things they despise, alien technology, hybrid agents, gene-spliced abominations, to fight greater threats. They are the Imperium's hypocrisy made flesh, justified by necessity. And then there is the Ordo Malleus, the oldest and most secretive of all. They hunt demons, creatures of the warp that defy human comprehension. Their agents walk in sanctified armor and carry weapons blessed by entire cathedrals. Their crusades are fought in shadows, their victories unknown. To speak their name is heresy in most sectors. Yet without them, mankind would be consumed by the warp in days. Each ordo is autonomous, yet intertwined. They spy on one another as much as they spy on humanity. The Inquisition does not trust itself because it cannot. Corruption is inevitable. Paranoia is survival. It is said that an inquisitor's greatest enemy is another inquisitor, and history has proven it true. Countless wars, purges, and schisms have been born not from heresy, but from disagreement between these agents of divine judgment. To serve as an inquisitor is to walk alone through the galaxy's madness. Many begin as acolytes, chosen from the ranks of Arbites, administratum scribes, or soldiers who have proven incorruptible. They are trained in secrecy, taught the ways of the enemy, and slowly molded into instruments of holy terror. When their masters die, which they always do, the acolyte inherits their rosette, the symbol of the Inquisition's authority. With that symbol comes the power to destroy worlds. The inquisitorial rosette is a key to the Imperium itself. It grants the bearer unrestricted access to any world, any record, any chamber. To refuse an inquisitor entry is to forfeit one's life. To question them is to invite death. Yet for all their power, few survive long. The Inquisition eats its own. Those who remain human too long are killed by those who believe humanity is weakness. Those who lose themselves to zealotry become monsters. The Inquisition must later destroy. The process of interrogation within the Inquisition defies comprehension. Prisoners are stripped not only of flesh, but of memory, their minds peeled layer by layer through psychic extraction. Some are broken, others remade. A few are even transformed into living weapons, blank-souled assassins or servitors infused with faith. An inquisitor's chambers are more like altars than courts, the walls covered in scriptures of guilt, the air thick with the scent of burned incense and human blood. And yet, there is purpose within this horror. The Inquisition does not exist to protect the innocent. It exists to protect the Imperium from the truth. The truth that the Emperor is dying, that humanity teeters on extinction, that chaos festers not in distant stars, but in every human heart. To reveal that truth would destroy the Imperium far faster than any Xeno or demon could. So they conceal it, with fire and silence. Their justice is final. There are no appeals, no reconsiderations, no mercy. If an Inquisitor orders a purge, the Arbites obey. If they demand the death of a world, the Astra Militarum prepares the bombardment. If they declare exterminatus, entire populations vanish in nuclear flame. And yet, there are Inquisitors who question the very thing they serve. They are divided, philosophically, into radicals and Puritans, opposing doctrines within the same unholy machine. The Puritans see themselves as the Emperor's purest flame. To them, compromise is corruption, and mercy is heresy. They destroy without hesitation, convinced that mankind's survival depends on absolute purity. The radicals, however, believe that survival requires adaptation, that to fight the darkness, one must sometimes become it. They wield forbidden technologies, bargain with Xenos, and even command demons, claiming it is all in service of humanity's salvation. The wars between them are endless. Some last centuries, some end with the death of entire sectors. The Inquisition's internal conflicts have caused more destruction than any rebellion it ever crushed. And yet this too is part of its design. Eternal war as eternal purification. For the Inquisition, justice is not about right or wrong. It is about survival. They do not serve morality. They serve endurance. And if that endurance demands that every planet burn, they will light the match themselves. There is an ancient saying among the Inquisitors: "We are the Emperor's rage made manifest." But even rage burns itself out. The oldest Inquisitors are shadows of men, kept alive by psychic infusion and faith alone. Some have seen the same heresies rise and fall for millennia. Others no longer believe in the Emperor as a god, but as a necessity, an idea too dangerous to die. In the dark cathedrals of the Ordo headquarters on Terra, where statues of saints cast shadows like crucifixions, the Inquisitors gather once every century. They do not pray. They debate. They decide which truths must be buried, which lies must live, which worlds must die to keep the illusion of divine order intact. The silence between them is heavier than any sermon, and when the conclave ends, the galaxy changes. A name erased, a planet burned, a truth forgotten. This is the hand of the Inquisition, the unseen architect of imperial justice. They are neither heroes nor villains. They are necessity given shape. The Imperium survives because of them, and despite them. They are the fire that consumes corruption and the smoke that hides it. For in the Imperium of man, justice is not blind. It watches, it whispers, and it always burns. In the Imperium of man, faith is not a virtue. It is currency. It is weighed, measured, and taxed like grain. The devout are rewarded with survival. The doubtful are burned for warmth. And nowhere is this transaction more visible than in the trials of the faithful, the sacred theater where justice and worship merge into one. To the ecclesiarchy, the imperial church, faith is not belief. It is obedience. It is ritual without thought, devotion without question. The priests teach that to doubt is to decay, and to decay is to die. Yet even within this dogma, there are those who stumble. Some whisper forbidden prayers, invoking the emperor as a man instead of a god. Some forget their daily litanies. Some commit the gravest sin of all, thinking about their faith. For these souls, there are no prisons. There are only altars. The ecclesiarchy calls it trial by purification. The accused are not simply judged, they are transformed into examples. Every hive, every shrine world, every fleet cathedral has its own form of trial, but all share the same purpose: to remind humanity that salvation is not love. It is fear. The process begins in the Hall of Atonement, a chamber of incense and silence, where accused heretics kneel before the icons of the emperor. A confessor stands before them, his voice heavy with ritual. He recites their crimes in a tone of prayer. Failure to kneel at morning prayer. Unauthorized scripture transcription. Possession of a book with unapproved binding. Each charge, no matter how absurd, carries the same weight: eternal damnation. Those accused are offered a single mercy: confession. If they confess, they are executed swiftly, a clean death, their ashes scattered into the incense fires as proof of redemption. If they deny their guilt, they are handed to the penitent's choir, zealots trained to extract confession through pain so exquisite, it's said the soul itself begins to scream. But the confession is never truly for the accused. It is for the spectators. Every trial is public. Hundreds, sometimes thousands gather to watch. Entire families bring their children to witness the burning of sinners. Preachers thunder from pulpits about the sanctity of obedience, the audience chanting with each lash, each scream, each spark of fire. The trial is not meant to reveal truth. It is meant to sanctify terror. To live in the Imperium is to witness justice as spectacle. On shrine worlds like Ophelia VII, the trials of the faithful are grand performances. Ornate pyres rise like cathedrals of flame, each surrounded by choirs singing hymns of purification. The condemned are dressed in white robes, their faces masked with gold leaf to honor their souls. They are strapped to pillars, doused in holy oils, and ignited with candles carved from saints' bones. As their bodies twist and burn, priests declare that the emperor receives their suffering as proof of mankind's devotion. But there are smaller, darker rituals too. On hive worlds, where faith is rationed like water, the trials are crude and immediate. Enforcers drag the accused into the open, nail them to the rusted walls of hab blocks, and let the crowds hurl stones, chanting the emperor's name. The corpses are left to hang for days, their flesh melting under the smog sun. By the time the Arbites arrive, the trial is already complete. The law smiles upon the faithful. Not all who face the ecclesiarchy's justice are guilty. Some are simply useful. When a noble family falls out of favor, their rivals often discover heretical behavior. A servant whispers that a relic was kept unblessed. A priest finds a discrepancy in tithe records. Soon, accusations multiply, and the family is summoned to trial. Their estates are seized, their names erased, and their ashes offered to the emperor. Their wealth becomes the church's. Their deaths become proof of purity. This corruption is not hidden. It is sanctified. The ecclesiarchy teaches that even false trials serve a divine purpose. For if the innocent burn alongside the guilty, the emperor will sort their souls himself. But not all who judge are cruel. There are confessors who doubt. Men and women who have seen too much blood spilled in the name of mercy. They whisper to their acolytes that true faith should comfort, not destroy. These whispers are dangerous. The ecclesiarchy's internal enforcers, the frateris militia, patrol the cathedrals for such heresy. When they find it, the confessors are put on trial beside their former prisoners. The congregation watches, chanting the same hymns they once preached. It is said that on some worlds, even priests have begun to fake trials, burning wax effigies in place of real heretics, declaring the emperor's will satisfied. The Arbites call this doctrinal fraud. The ecclesiarchy calls it creative salvation. Either way, it reveals the truth no sermon dares speak, that the machine of faith requires constant sacrifice, and when no heretics remain, it will invent them. Among the highest echelons of the ecclesiarchy, however, trials take on a more refined horror. In the great cathedrals of Terra itself, heresy is tried in courts of gold and marble. The accused are chained in sanctified cages suspended over pits of burning incense. Choirs sing while the cardinals deliberate for days, sometimes weeks, but the verdict never changes. The accused is guilty, because to accuse the church is to accuse the emperor. When sentence is passed, executioners in gilded armor step forward, their faces hidden by masks shaped like angels. They strike the condemned down with power swords, claiming the emperor's light guides their hands. The blood is collected, sanctified, and used to anoint the next generation of priests. The cycle is endless, circular, and self-devouring, a faith that feeds on itself. And yet, despite its madness, it works. Faith keeps the Imperium alive. The ecclesiarchy's terror binds a billion worlds in prayer. The people may live in misery, starvation, and ignorance, but they believe, because belief is all they have left. Even the condemned die whispering the emperor's name, convinced that somewhere, in his silent throne, he hears them. But there are moments, brief, heretical moments, when even the most devout begin to wonder, what if the emperor does not hear? What if he no longer cares? What if he never did? Those questions cannot be asked aloud. To think them is to sin. To speak them is to burn. But they linger in the quiet spaces between hymns, in the eyes of the dying, in the silence that follows every trial. There is a legend whispered among the redemptionists, those who seek to purify others through fire. It is said that one day, when the emperor finally speaks again, he will not praise the faithful for their devotion. He will ask them only one question: why did you burn in my name when I never asked for flame? Until that day, the trials continue. The fires are lit. The choirs sing. The guilty and the innocent both scream the same prayers. And in the smoke that rises to the stars, the Imperium sees not cruelty, but proof that it still believes. For in the Imperium of man, justice is faith, and faith is fire. In the endless, suffocating darkness of the hive cities, justice takes on another form. Not golden, not holy, not noble. It is iron, it is rust. It is the smell of oil and blood dripping down a steel stairwell. It is the hiss of a last pistol pressed against a trembling jaw while a voice whispers, "The Emperor protects." The obedient. The hives of the Imperium are worlds unto themselves. Vertical nations stacked one atop another, from the gilded spires where nobles dine on vat-grown delicacies, to the sump pits where men drown in sludge thicker than blood. Between those extremes lies the law, a patchwork of terror, bureaucracy, and decay that governs billions who will never see the sun. In theory, the lex imperialis applies to all. In practice, law in the hive is whatever keeps production quotas met and uprisings contained. The administratum cares not for fairness, only for flowcharts. The Arbites cannot patrol every hab, so they patrol symbols, gates, transit lines, tithing stations, refineries. Everywhere else, law is local, tribal, or forgotten. A typical hive is divided into levels: spires, middens, midhives, underhives, and the sump. Each stratum breathes its own version of order. In the upper spires, law is elegant, written on vellum, sealed with wax, and enforced by bodyguards in silk uniforms. In the lower hives, it is simple. If you can't defend your rights, you don't have any. The enforcers are the public face of the law, not Arbites. Those come rarely, only when rebellion flares or production halts. The enforcers are municipal brutes, dressed in black flak armor and faceplates that hide their rot and exhaustion. They answer to noble guilds, manufactorum lords, or whatever house pays their wages that quarter. Their job is not to protect citizens. It is to ensure the quotas flow upward and silence flows downward. Every hab block pays a compliance tithe, a daily tribute of credits, materials, or labor hours to the enforcer precinct. Those who pay live another day, those who do not vanish. Sometimes they reappear in the sump, nailed to the underside of a walkway, their eyes replaced with rusted coins. A warning and a ledger entry combined. In the hive, corruption isn't an exception. It's the bloodstream of the system. A bribe is a prayer, and everyone prays to someone. A hab mother buys clean air for her child from a clerk with the right seal. A worker pays extra for an oxygen filter stamped approved. A factory foreman gifts a crate of LO sticks to an enforcer captain, so his shifts won't be audited. The wheel turns, grinding down everyone caught beneath it. But the deeper you go, the less law you find, and the more faith. In the mid-hive shrines, preachers scream sermons to half-deaf laborers, waving relics of machine oil and bone. They tell them that the emperor sees their suffering, and that every lash, every hunger pang, Every minute spent welding under toxic fumes is a holy offering. The crowd weeps, not because they believe, but because there is nothing else to believe in. In the underhive, law dissolves entirely. The enforcers dare not go there. Even Arbites patrols travel in platoons. Here the gangs are the law. Names like the Iron Serpents, the Gutter Saints, the Red Blades, the Filth Rats. Each claims territory. Each enforces order through violence, and each in their own way mirrors the Imperium above. The gang leader is the governor. The strongest serve as enforcers. They tithe to the spire nobles who secretly fund them, keeping chaos at bay just enough for production to continue. Sometimes, these gangs take on religious aspects, declaring themselves the true flock of the Emperor. They burn heretics, carve the Aquila into their flesh, and chant litanies they barely understand. Others reject the Imperium entirely, worshipping the hive itself, calling it a god of iron and decay. The administratum records none of this. To them, as long as production reports are filed, the hive is stable. In truth, every hive world teeters on the edge of implosion. Entire sublevels collapse into the sump without notice. Tens of thousands die and are erased from record. The survivors move inward, stacking corpses to reinforce their walls, sealing themselves off from the light of day and the reach of the law. Once, there was a man named Marshal Garin, an Arbite stationed in Hive Tarsus. He tried to reform the system, to bring true order, not fear. He banned the enforcers from taking tithes, punished corrupt officers, and opened trials to the public. For 3 months the people cheered him. On the 4th month, his precinct burned. His body was found nailed to a spire gate, a parchment pinned to his chest reading, "Justice interferes with production." The governor promoted the enforcer captain who ordered it. The quotas rose. The administratum commended the planet for efficiency. That is imperial law in its truest form. Not justice, not fairness, but function. The only ones who question it are the desperate and the doomed. In the deepest hive levels, rumors spread of hidden judges, rogue Arbites, ex-confessors, or mechanicus defectors who dispense real justice. They are called the ghost justicars. They move unseen through the smog, executing slavers and corrupt enforcers, leaving behind only the scales of the Aquila carved into their victims' foreheads. No one knows if they are real. The Arbites deny their existence. The people pray they're not a myth. Every hive produces millions of orphans. Most die before adulthood. Those who survive are fed into the Schola Progenium, trained by the state to serve as guards, clerks, soldiers, or worse, as new enforcers. They are taught the same lesson as their masters. Mercy is weakness. Procedure is divine. By the time they return to the hive, they enforce the same cruelties that once enslaved them. The circle closes again. In the manufactorums, workers chant the same litanies every shift. The emperor sees, the emperor judges. The emperor endures. A man collapses from exhaustion. His body is dragged away. His place is filled before the machine cools. The overseer marks a note on his data slate. Worker 54B, removed for inefficiency. There will be no record of his death, no trial, no mention. The system doesn't recognize the individual, only the function. Sometimes, Arbites detachments descend to recalibrate order. They arrive in Thunderhawks, black-armored and cold as death. They seize gang leaders, kill hundreds, declare purity restored, and depart. A week later, the gangs return, wearing the same armor scavenged from the dead. The hive never changes. It only recycles its sins. But even here, among the smoke and screams, there are flashes of humanity. A worker smuggles extra rations to a child. A scribe alters a record to hide a neighbor's crime. A preacher lies to comfort the dying. These acts are illegal. They are also holy, for in a world where the law worships cruelty, kindness becomes rebellion. There is a saying scratched into the wall of Hive Tarsus's lowest level, a message written in blood and rust beneath the Aquila itself. In the hive, there is no justice. There is only survival, and survival is its own kind of prayer. When read by an Arbite, it is considered blasphemy. When whispered by a starving worker, it is scripture. And so the hives continue to breathe and rot, each one a metal lung in the corpse of the Imperium, inhaling faith, exhaling despair, for in the Imperium of man, the law may rise from the spire, but it dies in the hive. There are no prisons in the Imperium of man, not in the sense that ancient Terrans would have understood them. There are only holding pens, labor camps, and correctional manufactoria, each a pit designed to grind the human soul into compliance. To sin against the Imperium is not merely to break the law, it is to offend the divine order itself. And for that, punishment does not end with pain. It ends with erasure. The Imperium does not believe in rehabilitation, repentance perhaps, but only if it produces measurable labor. The moment you are judged guilty, your flesh becomes property. The Arbites do not ask what you did, only how best to use what remains of you. For minor offenses, lateness in tithe payments, minor blasphemies, theft of sacred rations, there is corporal correction. In the central squares of hive cities, beneath the bronze statues of saints, the enforcers line up the guilty and administer public floggings. The whip is not made of leather but of woven copper strands, each coated in sanctified oil. The blows are meant not to kill, but to mark. The scent of blood mingles with incense as the priests chant blessings. By pain, the soul is purified. By suffering, the emperor sees your worth. Those who survive limp back to their labor lines, their backs burned into living scripture. Those who don't are collected, catalogued, and sent to the reclamation vats, where their remains are rendered into protein paste for the next week's rations. Nothing is wasted in the Imperium, not even sin. For greater crimes, there is penal service, a sentence that can last a lifetime or 5 minutes, depending on how merciful your overseer feels. Entire regiments of the Astra Militarum are made up of such souls, the penal legions. They are branded at the base of the skull with explosive collars, herded into transports, and unleashed on the front lines of the galaxy's countless wars. They are the first to land and the last to be remembered. No banners, no honor, no hymns, just the whisper of detonators in their necks, and the promise of absolution if they survive. Few ever do. Yet the most terrifying punishment in the Imperium is not death. It is servitude, the transformation of man into machine. The servitor is what remains when the body has been stripped of will, the soul harvested for function. In the forges of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the condemned are handed over like raw material. Tech priests see not criminals, but components. A murderer becomes a loader drone, its arms replaced with pistons. A heretic preacher becomes a data recorder, its voice replaced by vox grills repeating factory prayers. A thief becomes a maintenance crawler, fused to the walls he once plundered. The process is called lobotomization, but that word barely describes the horror. The skull is opened, the brain scooped clean of identity, and in its place, sacred circuits are installed. Holy oils seal the wound. The new creature twitches once, as if in agony or awakening, and then falls silent. Its eyes no longer see, they measure. Its voice no longer prays, it reports. To the Mechanicus, this is redemption. To the ecclesiarchy, it is purification. To everyone else, it is damnation in slow motion. There are entire worlds where servitors outnumber the living. Forge World Graia, for example, houses more lobotomized laborers than human citizens. They toil in silence, maintaining machines older than history. When one breaks down, it is melted and reforged. There is no funeral, no remembrance, just recycling. The worst fate of all is penal mechanization, reserved for traitors, witches, and apostates. These souls are encased in war machines, the penitent engines, massive walkers of screaming flesh and iron, each powered by the tortured mind of its pilot. Their nerves are exposed, their limbs fused to servos, their voices permanently locked in prayers of agony. When they charge into battle, they scream hymns of forgiveness through flayed throats, cutting down the enemies of the Imperium until their bodies finally give out. To the sisters of battle who deploy them, the sight of a penitent engine is holy, the embodiment of divine punishment. To any sane observer, it is the purest nightmare the Imperium has ever created. And yet, there are punishments even darker, reserved for those whose crimes defy comprehension. Psychers who have lost control, cult leaders who summoned the warp, nobles who defied the ecclesiarchy. These are not executed, they are sacrificed. On Terra itself, beneath the golden towers of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, lies the Black Cells, a labyrinth of sealed vaults where condemned psychers are kept in total silence. Thousands upon thousands sit chained, drugged, and blindfolded, their minds harvested to feed the Golden Throne. Every day, 10,000 die, their souls burned to fuel the Astronomicon, the psychic beacon that guides humanity's fleets through the warp. They do not know that their agony keeps the Imperium alive. They believe they are being punished. In truth, they are being used. Justice in the Imperium is not about proportion. It is about permanence. Every punishment serves a higher purpose, or so the priests claim. Each lash, each execution, each mechanical graft is a lesson to the billions who remain obedient. But beneath that logic lies madness. There are reports, whispered, denied, buried, of entire penal colonies that vanished into the warp. Planets turned into experiments by rogue tech priests, servitor factories producing machines that remember who they once were. A man once wrote, before being purged from all records, when punishment becomes the foundation of order, the Imperium itself is the crime. He was executed before the ink dried. Still, the system endures. On distant worlds, in dimly lit manufactorums, servitors drag broken bodies to the processing bays. Arbites march through streets of ash, their boots echoing off the skulls of the condemned. Preachers tell children that pain is proof of the Emperor's love. And in the quiet between screams, you can almost believe them. Because the Imperium has perfected the one truth that outlasts all others. Pain never ends. Pain is eternal. Pain works, and as long as humanity keeps screaming, the Emperor's realm still lives. For in the Imperium of man, punishment is not a sentence. It is existence itself. Mercy in the Imperium is a contradiction, a forbidden word whispered only by fools, heretics, and saints. It is not a virtue. It is a weapon, sharper than any blade, deadlier than any laser gun. For to show mercy in a realm built upon cruelty is to defy the very foundations of its survival. The Imperium was never designed for compassion. It was built for endurance, for holding the line against extinction. In that machine of a million worlds, mercy is a grain of sand in the gears. It disrupts, it questions, it slows the rhythm of obedience. And so the Imperium made sure that mercy has a price. And that price is everything. In the Ecclesiarchy's catechisms, there are only two forms of mercy sanctioned by the Emperor's will: cleansing and silence. To cleanse a sinner through fire or to silence them forever. To forgive without these is considered arrogance. A mortal pretending to know better than God. Priests teach that the Emperor himself shows no mercy. His judgment is absolute, his light unyielding. But among the dust and ruin of his empire, some still try. On the hive world of Morvain, an Arbites officer named Judge Caldern Voss once refused to execute a worker accused of heresy. The man's crime was simple. He had stolen a sliver of corpse starch to feed his dying daughter. When interrogated, he confessed immediately, begging for punishment upon himself alone. Voss, who had watched 1,000 executions in the name of justice, hesitated. For the first time in his life, he saw not a criminal, but a man. He released him, quietly, secretly. Within a week, Voss's precinct was purged. His own men turned on him. The worker was found and executed with his entire family. Voss was dragged to the Hall of Correction, stripped of his badge, and nailed to the wall beside them. Above their bodies, carved into the stone, were the words, "Mercy breeds heresy." It became a slogan, printed on propaganda posters across the sector. The Imperium does not forget compassion. It crushes it into warning signs. But mercy persists, small, trembling, and defiant. In the medical wings of Astra Militarum regiments, field medicus sometimes spare wounded deserters, marking their death certificates early so the munitorum won't notice. On Forge worlds, low-ranking tech adepts secretly spare damaged servitors, shutting them down instead of scrapping them. On void ships, captains falsify supply records to send food into starving decks. Every act of mercy is an act of rebellion, quiet, fragile, and utterly human. The system knows this. It hunts these moments relentlessly. The Ordo Hereticus calls it doctrinal corrosion, the gradual decay of loyalty through empathy. In their eyes, a merciful soldier is worse than a traitor. A traitor can be shot. Mercy spreads like infection. The Sisters of Battle are perhaps the purest reflection of this philosophy. They are trained not to hate. Hatred is too emotional, too human. Instead, they are trained to obey. When a sister burns a heretic, she weeps not out of pity but of devotion. If she spares him, she risks damnation. For her faith to remain pure, her mercy must die. And yet, some break. Records exist, sealed, redacted, whispered about, of repentia orders formed from sisters who showed compassion in battle. Women who spared mutants, who sheltered children born with deformities, who questioned an inquisitor's orders. Their punishment is not execution but redemption through suffering. Their armor stripped, their hair shorn. They are given only a chain blade and one command: die in his name. They charge into enemy lines, screaming prayers until nothing remains but blood. In their death, the Ecclesiarchy claims, mercy is finally purified. But not all merciful acts end in tragedy. There are rare stories, buried beneath centuries of censure, where compassion changed everything. On the frontier world of Helios Prime, A governor once refused an exterminatus order. A minor warp incursion had erupted, and the Inquisition demanded immediate purging. The governor delayed, buying time for evacuation. For 2 weeks, he fought both the demons and the administratum's wrath, saving millions before orbital fire consumed the planet. He was executed for disobedience, but in secret, the people he saved built a shrine in his honor. A place where the phrase, "mercy is not weakness," is carved into every wall. The shrine still stands, hidden beneath a manufactorum, its candles kept alive by generations of workers who never knew his name. Because mercy, in the Imperium, is never truly destroyed. It is buried, like a seed under ash, waiting for the briefest spark of light. Inquisitors understand this too well. The most ruthless among them, those who purge entire populations without hesitation, often do so not because they lack empathy, but because they have too much of it. They know that if they falter once, they might never stop faltering. That one act of pity could undo their resolve forever. So they kill to protect their own hearts from breaking. The Inquisition's mercy is terrifying. It comes in the form of instant death. A bolt pistol to the head before torture can begin. A quick vaporization before the flames reach the screaming. In their logic, mercy is efficiency. And yet whispers persist of certain inquisitors who operate in shadow, not by purging, but by sparing. They call themselves the Grey Hands. They remove the condemned from record, falsify their deaths, and relocate them under new identities. To the Imperium, these people are ash. To the Grey Hands, they are potential. Some become clerks. Others vanish into the frontier. None ever speak of what they saw. Such inquisitors are rare. Most are eventually discovered and executed by their peers. Their last words, almost always the same. Even he must have mercy, or he would have destroyed us long ago. But no one dares repeat that publicly. Not in an empire that worships endurance above kindness. There's an old saying from the hive preachers. The Emperor's mercy is the space between breaths. Too small to live in, but enough to die for. And that is what mercy is in the Imperium. A fleeting, forbidden breath between one horror and the next. A dying soldier whispering a prayer for his enemy. A child spared by a guard who can't bring himself to pull the trigger. A doctor lying on a form so a mutant can live one more day. It changes nothing. It saves almost no one. But it keeps the galaxy human. If only for a moment, because mercy, in the Imperium, is not policy. It's rebellion dressed as grace, and every act of mercy, no matter how small, is paid for in blood. If the Emperor is the heart of the Imperium, then bureaucracy is its circulatory system. A vast, clotted labyrinth of ink and parchment, where every breath of human life must pass through layers of stamped approval to be acknowledged. It is not merely administration. It is theology. It is the worship of process elevated to divine law. The Adeptus Administratum governs this ocean of red tape. To the uninitiated, they are clerks and scribes. To the Imperium, they are the true high priests of continuity. 1,000,000 robed servants hunched over data slates, candles dripping onto ancient parchment, recording every transaction, tithe and death across 1,000,000 worlds. They do not see people. They see categories. They do not handle lives. They handle statistics. The lexicon of their power is written in ink, blood, and dust. Every citizen, every regiment, every bullet fired in the Emperor's name must be accounted for somewhere, even if it takes centuries for the record to be processed. The Administratum's archives on Terra are so vast that entire continents of scribes live and die filing papers that no one will ever read. They are the most silent tyrants in existence. Not because they wield guns, but because they wield delay. There are planets that have starved to death waiting for supply approval. Armies that have rotted in orbit because requisition codes were lost in transit. Entire civil wars have burned themselves out while petitions for assistance sat unopened in a data vault beneath a scribe's corpse. And still, no one calls it corruption. They call it procedure. The bureaucracy of the Imperium is sacred. To question its inefficiency is to question divine will. The Emperor himself, it is said, decreed that order must be recorded, that every action in his name be catalogued, so that his realm may never fall to chaos. What the ecclesiarchy never mentions is that chaos often wins not with blood, but with backlog. In the halls of the Administratum, there are whispers of the dead files, requests and declarations so old that no one remembers their origin. One legend speaks of an Imperial Guard regiment still officially awaiting deployment, though its members have been dead for 7,000 years. Another tells of a world ordered for exterminatus that was never informed. The fleet arrived 5 centuries late to find ruins and dust. This is how the Imperium functions. by inertia, not intention. But the chains of bureaucracy bind not only the weak, they strangle the strong. When an inquisitor wishes to requisition a fleet, he must submit the request through a network of adepts who cross-check every seal. When the Astra Militarum seeks reinforcements, forms must pass through 12 departments of validation. Even the Space Marines, though blessed by the Emperor, must often wait for the approval of quartermasters who have never seen a battlefield. It is said that the Emperor sits immobile on the golden throne because the paperwork to stand again has not yet been processed. Each adept believes himself vital, yet none see the whole machine. They copy, they seal, they pray. Every form bears the aquila, every ink stain a prayer of duty. They mutter catechisms as they file reports. Record to preserve, preserve to serve, serve to endure. And endure they do, endlessly. There are hive cities where generations are born into bureaucratic service, never seeing sunlight. Families inherit desks the way nobles inherit titles. Their entire lives revolve around a single department. Tithe calculation, subsector cargo allocation, form authentication. Sublevel 3. The highest honor is not wealth or freedom. It's a promotion to a slightly less suffocating room. Some lose themselves completely, a condition known as clerical recursion. When an adept becomes so consumed by the need to maintain order that they begin to create paperwork for their own paperwork, the administratum quietly encourages it. After all, zeal, even in madness, keeps the machine turning. The most terrifying truth is that no one truly controls it anymore. Not the High Lords, not the Inquisition, not even the Emperor's silent will. The bureaucracy of the Imperium has achieved sentience of a sort, not through thought, but through persistence. It no longer serves humanity. Humanity serves it. There are those who try to fight it. Rebels, reformers, fools. A young scribe named Lyra Haldane once attempted to digitize her sector's records, believing efficiency was holy. Her reforms cut response times in half, saved billions in resources, and improved tithe quotas. The result? She was executed for innovation without sanction. Her work was declared heretical automation and buried beneath 6,000 pages of censure. The administratum does not fear failure. It fears change, because change is chaos. And in a galaxy that teeters on the edge of annihilation, stagnation feels like safety. Still, there are rare moments when the system's inertia saves the Imperium. During the 10th Black Crusade, a Chaos fleet invaded the Belize Corona sector. Orders for retreat were misfiled. Reinforcements meant for another front accidentally arrived. By the time anyone realized, the Imperium had won a victory born entirely from clerical error. The survivors called it a miracle. The administratum called it administrative compliance. Even the Mechanicus has its own bureaucracy, a hierarchy of machine prayer and data ritual. A tech adept must submit a request in triplicate before changing the temperature of a forge, each copy sealed with oil, incense, and binary chants. To disobey is to risk the wrath of a magos who believes inefficiency is sin. The ecclesiarchy's bureaucracy is worse still. Every sermon must be approved, every saint's name verified. Entire departments exist to debate which miracles count as canon. There are priests who have spent lifetimes arguing over a single footnote in scripture while their worlds burn. And yet, for all its absurdity, the machine of bureaucracy keeps the Imperium alive. Not efficiently, not fairly, but it keeps it stable. The slow suffocation of paperwork prevents the faster death of chaos. To rebel against it is to invite the void. To serve it is to lose your humanity. Somewhere in a vault on Terra, a document exists declaring the end of the Imperium itself. A contingency plan drafted by some long-dead adept in the age of apostasy. It sits on a shelf, unsigned, waiting for approval that will never come. And perhaps that is mercy, because the moment the Imperium's paperwork ends, so too does its illusion of order. Until then, the quills scratch, the ink flows, the files pile higher, and the galaxy continues to drown in its own devotion to control. In the Imperium of man, justice does not come from faith or power. It comes from the correct form, stamped in triplicate, sealed with wax, and filed in a cabinet no one will ever open. No one alive can say they have truly seen the Emperor. Those who approach his golden throne do so only to die in his service, their flesh turned to ash by the radiance of his eternal decay. Yet every law, every execution, every sacrifice in the Imperium is made in his name. His will is both distant and absolute, unreachable yet omnipresent, a paradox that binds all of humanity in worship and fear. The Golden Throne itself is less a seat and more a prison, an ancient fusion of divine engineering and decaying technology. that sustains the Emperor's half-living form. Deep within the Imperial palace on Terra, guarded by the Adeptus Custodes and shrouded in incense and silence, it hums with power that predates comprehension. 1 billion psychers have died to feed it. 1,000 worlds bleed their tithe to maintain it. It is not a symbol of life, but of cost. Every breath the Emperor takes is bought with 10,000 deaths. Every flicker of light in the Astronomicon, that psychic beacon guiding mankind through the warp, is fueled by agony. Somewhere in the galaxy, a ship avoids annihilation because a nameless soul on Terra screamed for one last second before being extinguished. This is the rhythm of the Imperium. Suffering transmuted into order, death repurposed into direction. To the ecclesiarchy, this is proof of his divine mercy. To the Inquisition, it is proof of necessity. But to those who have looked too long into the throne's glow, it is a question that has no answer. What is left of a god who must consume his own children to survive? The Custodes never ask. They are the Emperor's bodyguards still, though he no longer moves. Each one is a living relic, genetically perfect, carved from his vision of mankind's potential. They do not sleep. They do not question. They stand watch as the Emperor's mortal shell rots, their golden armor reflecting the flicker of the throne's dying light. To them, he is not decaying, he is enduring. To doubt that would be to admit the unthinkable, that even gods can die. The Adeptus Mechanicus calls the throne a machine beyond replication, a divine circuit too ancient to understand. They maintain it not through knowledge, but through liturgy. They chant binary prayers, replace decayed components with faith rather than certainty, and interpret system failures as divine tests. If the machine stutters, they pray harder. If it burns, they call it purification. No one dares to ask what will happen if it stops. The Emperor's death is not a possibility. It is an apocalypse deferred. The Astronomicon would extinguish. Warp storms would swallow the stars. Humanity would fracture, screaming into the void. The Imperium endures not because it is strong, but because it is afraid. Afraid of what comes after. Afraid of what might already be happening behind the throne's golden walls. Because there are whispers, always whispers, that he stirs. That sometimes, in the silence between the pulse of the machine, a voice echoes through the minds of those nearby. That sometimes the Emperor speaks. To some, it is hope. To others, heresy. One adept who worked near the throne claimed to have heard him whisper a single word. Enough. The man was executed before he finished writing his confession. The parchment, however, was preserved in the archives of the Ordo Hereticus as a specimen of delusion. It is said that the ink still glows faintly when read under starlight. But maybe the Emperor never said anything. Maybe he is silent because he must be, because if he were to speak again, the Imperium would shatter under the truth of what it has become. Every day, 10,000 psychers are fed into the throne's mechanisms. Their deaths are ritual, their agony sanctified. The black ships arrive constantly, filled with the condemned, each believing they serve a purpose greater than themselves. And they do, but not the one they are told. Their sacrifice sustains the beacon that allows the Imperium to navigate the warp. But it also feeds the Emperor's prison. It keeps him contained. The High Lords of Terra do not see it as cruelty. They see it as balance. The Imperium is too vast to rule, too decayed to reform, too sacred to abandon. The throne is the weight that keeps it from collapsing under its own faith. If the Emperor were ever to die, his absence would tear the galaxy apart. And so they ensure that he never does. Not truly alive, not truly dead. Just enduring, forever. There is a term whispered among the few who understand this horror, the eternal burden. It is the belief that the Emperor is trapped not by his enemies, but by his followers, that his will long ago was to die and ascend, to become something more. But humanity's fear chained him to the mortal plane, that the Golden Throne is not his salvation, but his coffin. The Mechanicus denies it. The ecclesiarchy calls it heresy. The Inquisition destroys anyone who repeats it, but some of the oldest texts, those hidden in the catacombs of Mars and beneath the Palace of Terra, speak of a time when the Emperor was seen walking among men, speaking with them, smiling, and the question lingers like a shadow. If he could see what the Imperium has become, would he forgive it? Perhaps forgiveness is beyond even gods, because the Imperium's cruelty is not an accident. It is a reflection of the burden it carries. 10,000 years of survival, built on the foundation of sacrifice and bureaucracy, fear and faith. The Emperor's dream was unity. His legacy is submission. The Imperium does not serve him. It serves the ghost of what it thinks he wanted, and yet, impossibly, it endures. In the dark, on forgotten worlds where no light reaches, people still pray. Not because they expect mercy, but because they need to believe that something listens. A mother whispers the Emperor's name over her dying child. A guardsman carves the Aquila into the mud before charging into the fire. A prisoner in a hive cell raises his eyes to the ceiling and whispers, "He protects." Maybe that faith, raw, blind, desperate, is what keeps him alive. Not the machines, not the psychers, not the mechanicus rituals, but the uncountable flickers of belief scattered across the stars. Maybe that is the true Astronomicon, the collective light of hope in a galaxy that has forgotten what hope feels like. Or maybe it's all delusion. Maybe the Emperor died long ago, and all that remains is the echo of his name. Maybe humanity marches on, sustained only by habit and fear. But even if that is true, the illusion is powerful enough to hold back the night. At the end of all things, when the last world burns and the last soldier falls, there will still be one figure on Terra, a corpse of gold, surrounded by machines that hum with the energy of a dying god. And perhaps in that final silence, the Emperor will finally be allowed to rest. Or perhaps not. Because even then, some distant voice will whisper across the void, trembling and afraid, for the Emperor, and the weight of the throne will begin again.